Welcome! Today we're going to tackle one of philosophy's most challenging ideas, post-structuralism. But don't worry, we're going to break it all down with some simple analogies that will make it make sense. But first, let's just kick things off with a simple question to get our brains warmed up. When you read a book, who decides what it really means? Is it the author, or is it you? The answer, as you're about to see, is a lot messier than you might think. Okay, so here's our game plan for breaking this down. We're going to start with what came before post-structuralism, then see how the whole thing got turned on its head. After that, we'll explore what it all means for authors, readers, and even the invisible rules that run our society. All right, first things first. To really get post-structuralism, we have to understand what it was pushing back against. And that was a very neat and tidy idea called structuralism. Think about it like this. Structuralists were kind of like architects who believed that every building had a single master blueprint. Their whole goal was to find that central plan, because if you could find it, you could understand the entire structure. But then the post-structuralists showed up, and they started asking some pretty awkward questions. Like, hey, are we sure there is one master blueprint? What if the building can be understood in a million different ways depending on where you're standing? So let's zoom in on the moment that this whole tidy world of structures really started to crack. The year is 1966. A philosopher named Jacques Derrida gets up to give a lecture, and he basically throws a wrench into everything. He pointed out that for centuries, everyone just assumed that every system, a book, a culture, you name it, had a stable center that held it all together and gave it meaning. Derrida's big revolutionary idea was to ask, what if that center isn't really there at all? And this is where we get Derrida's most famous tool, deconstruction. Honestly, the best way to get it is to think of a game of Jenga. Deconstruction is like carefully pulling out that one block everyone assumes is holding the whole tower up. You do it just to see how the structure is really put together, to reveal all the hidden weaknesses and shaky spots you'd never notice otherwise. So, okay, if there's no fixed center, no single master blueprint, what on earth does that mean for something as basic as reading a book? Who's in charge of the meaning now? Well, this leads us to one of post-structuralism's most famous and dramatic phrases from a guy named Roland Barthes, the death of the author. Now, it sounds intense, I know, but the idea behind it is an absolute game changer. It doesn't mean the author literally, drops dead. It just means that their intention is no longer the final authority on what a text means. Here's a good way to think about it. Imagine a chef cooks you a meal. They had a certain taste in mind, right? But once that plate is in front of you, the final meaning of that dish is created by your own taste buds, your own memories, your own experiences. The reader, in a way, becomes the new chef. And the consequences of this are just huge. The whole power dynamic flips on its head. Suddenly, the reader is the star of the show, actively producing meaning, not just digging for some treasure the author buried. The author is no longer the all-powerful planner. And even our own sense of self as a single, stable person starts to get a little shaky. Now, this idea of questioning authority doesn't stop with books, not even close. It leads us to another key thinker, Michel Foucault, who took these ideas and applied them to the very rules that run our entire society. Foucault's big must-know concept is called discourse. And right away, let me say, this isn't just about people having a conversation. No. Discourse is the entire invisible framework of ideas, language, and rules that decides what can and cannot even be talked about in the first place. So, think of discourse as the unwritten rulebook for a game you didn't even know you were playing. It defines who gets to be a player, what counts as a legal move, and even what it means to win. It quietly shapes what we all accept as normal or true, whether we're talking about medicine, politics, or anything else. So, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is all very abstract. Why does any of this actually matter to me? What's the real-world takeaway from all this questioning? Well, the absolute core of post-structuralism is that it's anti-foundational. All that means is that it's deeply skeptical of any claim to a final, absolute, capital T truth. It challenges us to look really critically at all the things we just assume are solid, permanent facts about the world. And that is an incredibly powerful tool to have. It lets you analyze and question the power structures all around you. It helps you see that things we think of as natural, ideas about gender or success or politics, are very often just social constructions, built by people with certain interests.
It pushes us to see truth not as some fixed thing, but as something that always depends on context, on power, and on perspective.
And so that's what it leaves us with. This isn't just some dusty academic theory. It's a lens. It's a new way of seeing the world. Not as it is, but as it has been built. And anything that's been built can be taken apart, it can be re-examined, and maybe it can even be changed. So the question I'll leave you with is this. What unquestioned truth in your own world might be worth a second look?